What this wounded gray being revealed to me about Jesus' true healing power will shatter everything your church taught you about miracles. Before this story ends, you'll understand why your prayers for healing haven't worked the way you hoped, and you'll discover abilities within yourself that no sermon ever mentioned. If you're ready to hear truths that have been hidden for 2,000 years, truths that will transform not just what you believe, but what you can actually do, then subscribe to Stories of Light and activate the bell. Because what happened to me, Sarah Mitchell, on a cold November night in rural Montana in 1997, didn't just change my understanding of medicine, faith, and reality itself. It revealed why Jesus could heal with a touch and why you can too. Now let me tell you how it all started.
November 14th, 1997, 11:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I just checked my watch, calculating how many hours until my next shift at Mercy General. Living alone in a farmhouse 5 miles outside of Billings, Montana, the silence was usually comforting. That night, it was shattered. The sound came first, not an explosion, but a piercing hum that made my teeth ache and my coffee mug vibrate across the kitchen table. Then the flash. Blue-white light flooded through my windows so bright I threw my arm across my eyes. The power flickered once, twice, then died completely. My nurse's training kicked in before my fear could. I grabbed my emergency medical bag, always packed, always ready, and my flashlight. Something had crashed. Someone might be hurt. That's what I told myself as I pushed through the back door into the freezing November air. The wheat field behind my property was glowing. Not burning, glowing. A pulsing, silvery blue light emanated from something half buried in the frozen earth about 200 yards out. My breath came in visible clouds as I ran, my boots crunching through the frost-hardened stalks. As I got closer, my rational mind tried to make sense of what I was seeing. A plane? No, the shape was wrong. Disc-like, maybe 30 feet across, with a surface that seemed to shift between metallic and something almost organic. Part of it was crumpled, sparking weakly. And there was a smell, like ozone and copper, and something else I couldn't identify. Then I saw him. The being lay 20 feet from the craft, and my first absurd thought was how small he was, maybe 4 feet tall, his gray skin almost luminescent in the darkness. His head was disproportionately large, his limbs thin and fragile looking, but it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Huge, black, almond-shaped eyes that reflected my flashlight beam like a cat's. And in their depths I saw something I recognized from 15 years of nursing. Pain. Terrible pain. "This can't be happening," I whispered. "This isn't real." But the dark liquid pooling beneath him was real. His chest, if it was a chest, rose and fell in shallow, rapid movements. One of his arms was bent at an impossible angle. And those eyes, they found mine and held them. I should have run. Every survival instinct I possessed screamed at me to run. Instead, I dropped to my knees beside him, my medical training overriding my terror. "I'm a nurse," I said, not knowing if he could understand. "I want to help." His chest stopped moving. "No, no, no," I muttered, reaching for his wrist. Did he even have a pulse point? His skin was cool, smooth, nothing like human skin. I pressed my fingers to his neck, searching desperately for any sign of a heartbeat. Then his voice entered my mind. Not through my ears, through my mind. A presence, gentle but urgent, speaking in perfect English inside my head. "Please, I am dying. But before I do, there are things you must know about healing, about the one you call Jesus, about what you truly are." I jerked back, my heart hammering. What? How are you? No time. My ship's core is damaged. I have minutes, perhaps. But I did not come to your world by accident, Sarah Mitchell. I came because you were ready. Ready to remember what your religions forgot. You know my name? I whispered. I know your pain, your loss, your prayers that seem to be unanswered. I know you ask why every day. Will you help me? Will you let me show you why? I looked at this impossible being, this creature that couldn't exist, dying in my wheat field. I thought about the Hippocratic oath I had taken. I thought about every patient I'd lost despite my best efforts. I thought about how many times I'd begged God for the power to heal, to make a real difference, and felt that prayer disappear into an empty void. Yes, I whispered. Tell me what to do.
Sarah Mitchell had been a registered nurse for 15 years, working the ICU night shift at Mercy General Hospital in Billings. Known for her steady hands during codes and her ability to start IVs in the most difficult veins, she'd built a reputation as the nurse you wanted when things went bad. But beneath that competent exterior, Sarah was drowning in questions that medicine couldn't answer. Everything had changed 3 years earlier when her husband David died. Not dramatically, not in some tragic accident that might have made sense of senseless loss. He'd simply collapsed during his morning jog, a massive heart attack at 42. By the time the ambulance arrived, by the time Sarah, who'd been sleeping after a night shift, woke to the sirens, it was too late. She'd performed CPR on her own husband in their driveway, her training taking over even as her heart shattered. She'd felt his ribs crack under her compressions. She'd breathed air into his lungs. She'd done everything right, everything she'd done 100 times for strangers, and it hadn't mattered. David died anyway. Raised in a devout Baptist family in rural Montana, Sarah had always believed in God's plan, in prayer, in the power of faith. Her mother had taught her that righteous prayer could move mountains, that God answered the prayers of the faithful. So Sarah had prayed. Oh God, how she had prayed. She'd prayed in the ambulance. She'd prayed in the hospital. She'd prayed at his funeral while her pastor spoke about God's mysterious ways and perfect timing. She'd prayed every night for 3 years, kneeling beside the bed she'd once shared with David, begging for understanding, for peace, for some sign that his death meant something. The silence from heaven was deafening. Her pastor said she needed more faith. Her mother said God's timeline wasn't ours to understand. The grief counselor the hospital made her see said she was experiencing complicated grief and anger at God was normal. But none of them answered the question that burned in Sarah's chest every day. If God was all-powerful and all-loving, why did her desperate prayers feel like shouting into a void? At 45, Sarah had everything the world said mattered: a good career, a paid-off farmhouse, savings in the bank, but felt completely hollow inside. She had stopped attending church 6 months ago, not from anger exactly, but from exhaustion. Exhaustion from pretending the sermons made sense. Exhaustion from singing about God's goodness while feeling utterly alone. Exhaustion from watching people raise their hands in worship, feeling connection to something she couldn't feel anymore. The worst part was her job. Every shift, she watched people pray over dying loved ones. She watched families beg God for miracles. Sometimes patients recovered. Medicine and chance, she'd learned to think. More often, they didn't. And she'd watch those families walk away confused, guilty, wondering what they'd done wrong, why their prayers hadn't been enough. If God is real, she'd whispered to the empty kitchen just that morning, why does prayer work like broken telephone? Why do we beg and plead and bargain, and sometimes things happen, and sometimes they don't,
with no pattern, no reason, no response. She'd been a healer, or trying to be, her entire adult life. She dedicated herself to easing suffering, to fighting death, to making a difference, but every patient she lost felt like a personal failure. Every time medicine wasn't enough, every time she had to meet a family's hopeful eyes and shake her head, something inside her broke a little more. Her best friend Linda had stopped inviting her to lunch after the third time Sarah had declined. Her sister called less frequently, tired of Sarah's inability to move on and get back out there. The truth was, Sarah didn't want to move on. She wanted answers. She wanted to understand why the universe felt so random, so indifferent, so silent. Late at night, when the farmhouse was especially quiet, Sarah would stare at the ceiling and ask questions she'd never voice aloud. What if everything she'd been taught was wrong? What if God wasn't listening because there was no God? What if she'd wasted her whole life believing in fairy tales while the universe spun on, uncaring? But she couldn't quite let go, because she'd seen things, small things, unexplainable things. A patient who shouldn't have survived, who did. A moment during a code when she'd felt something move through her hands, something warm and electric, and the patient's heart had restarted. She'd dismissed it as adrenaline, as a coincidence, but part of her wondered. At 45, Sarah Mitchell was trapped between two impossibilities: a God who didn't answer prayers, and a universe where miracles sometimes happened anyway. She was a woman of science who'd seen too much to be satisfied with natural causes, and a woman of faith who'd prayed too much to still believe prayer worked the way her church taught it did. She was lonely, not just without David, but spiritually lonely, cut off from something she'd once felt connected to. She was angry at God, at herself, at the unfairness of a world where good people suffered and prayers went unanswered. But mostly, she was open. Open in the way that only the truly broken can be. Open because everything she'd built her life on had crumbled, leaving her with nothing to lose. And then came the night of November 14th, 1997, when the universe answered her questions in a way she could never have imagined.
"Your ship," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady as I knelt beside the dying being. "Can it be repaired?" "Not by me, but that is not important now. What is important is what I came to share, before this form fails completely." "No," I said firmly, my nurse's instinct taking over. "You're not dying on my watch if I can help it. Where are you hurt?" The being, I still didn't know what to call him, shifted slightly, and I saw him wince. The gesture was so human it made my heart ache. "Internal damage. Your medical knowledge cannot help me, but your compassion, that is healing in itself." "Let me try," I insisted. I opened my emergency bag, though I had no idea what good human medical supplies would do. "I can't just watch you die." "Why?" The question appeared in my mind, genuinely curious. "I am not your kind. You owe me nothing, yet you kneel in frozen earth, offering help." "This is why I came to you, Sarah. This compassion." I thought about that question as I examined him, gently probing his injuries with hands that had assessed hundreds of trauma patients. His arm was definitely broken, fractured in 2 places. The dark fluid leaking from his side was slowing, but his breathing remained shallow. "Because when someone is suffering, you help them," I said simply. "That's what being human means, or what it should mean." I tore open a gauze pack and pressed it against the wound in his side. He didn't bleed red like humans. The fluid was darker, almost black in the dim light. But pressure still seemed to slow the bleeding. "This act of mercy," his voice resonated in my mind, "is closer to what the one you call Jesus taught than anything your churches practice. You serve without judgment,
without asking if I deserve help, without requiring me to believe correctly first. I had questions, so many questions, but first I needed to stabilize him. I splinted his arm using supplies from my bag and 2 straight pieces of debris from his craft. I elevated his head slightly, remembering that even if his biology was different, basic trauma care might still apply. As I worked, I felt something strange, a warmth in my hands, similar to that electric sensation I'd felt during codes, but stronger, more distinct. I'd always dismissed it before, but now, focused completely on helping this impossible being, I couldn't ignore it. "I wish I knew how to really heal you," I whispered. "Not just stop the bleeding, but actually fix what's broken inside." "You do know." His mental voice was weaker now, but still clear. "You have always known, but you were taught to forget, to doubt, to believe you are powerless without external intervention." "What do you mean?" "The one you call Jesus, he was not unique in his abilities. He was unique in his mastery, in his understanding, in his willingness to demonstrate. But what he could do, you can learn to do. This is what I came to tell you. This is why I crossed such vast distance to reach you specifically." My hands stilled on his bandages. "You came for me. Why?" "Because you have been praying for answers. Because you have been asking the right questions. Because your heart is open, even though it is broken. And because the consciousness that you call God has been answering, you simply did not recognize the answer." "God sent you? An alien?" Something like humor flickered across his enormous black eyes. "God, Source, Universal Consciousness, whatever name you prefer, does not send. Source is. And we who have evolved beyond your parent state are part of Source's expression, just as you are. I came because I heard your call, your prayer. And I came to answer it, but not in the way you expected." "I don't understand." "You will." His breathing was getting shallower. "But first, I must show you something. Something about how healing truly works. About what Jesus really did. About what you can do right now if you release what you have been taught and remember what you truly are." "I'm listening," I said, my heart pounding. "Then place your hands over my heart center, and I will guide you in activating what has always been there." I placed my hands where the being indicated, over his chest, feeling the irregular flutter of whatever served as his heart. The moment my palms made contact with his cool skin, something shifted. It was like tuning into a radio frequency I'd never known existed. "For 15 years, you have been praying," his voice entered my mind, stronger now despite his weakened state. "Asking God for help, begging for healing power. But you have been operating from a frequency of lack, and lack is exactly what you have been manifesting." "I don't understand." "When you pray, 'Please God, give me the power to heal,' what are you actually saying? You are affirming, 'I do not have power. I am separate from God. I am insufficient.' And the universe, which responds to consciousness, gives you exactly that. More powerlessness, more separation, more insufficiency." I wanted to argue, but something in his words resonated with a truth I'd felt but never articulated. All those prayers begging and pleading. "God is not up there judging whether you are worthy of healing abilities," he continued. "God is not an external king dispensing favors to those who grovel correctly. God is within you, has always been within you. The separation you feel is illusion, programming designed to keep humans dependent on intermediaries, priests, churches, institutions." "But the Bible says," "The Bible was written by humans who understood partially, then translated by humans with agendas,
then interpreted by institutions that benefited from your powerlessness. Do you truly believe the infinite consciousness that creates galaxies needs you to beg, to prove yourself worthy, to follow specific rituals? Then how does it work? My hands were growing warmer against his chest. If prayer doesn't work the way I was taught, how does healing work? Jesus of Nazareth was not what your religions teach. He was not God's only son in the way they claim, as if God has favorites, as if divine consciousness plays favorites. He was an advanced consciousness that incarnated to demonstrate what all humans can become. The warmth in my hands was intensifying, becoming almost uncomfortable. You're saying Jesus was like you? Jesus was far more evolved than I am. He mastered laws of consciousness and matter that I am still learning. But yes, he was a being who had awakened to his true nature, who remembered his connection to Source, and who came specifically to show humans that they are not separate from God. They are God, experiencing itself through individual perspective. That's heresy, is it? Did Jesus not say, "The kingdom of God is within you"? Did he not say, "You will do even greater works than I have done"? Did he not say, "I and the Father are one," and then immediately add that this truth applies to all? I realized I had no response. Those verses existed. I'd heard them my entire life, but I'd been taught they meant something different than what they literally said. What you call miracles, the being's mental voice continued, were applications of consciousness technology. Jesus mastered the relationship between thought, emotion, and physical matter. When he healed, he was not channeling external divine power, he was directing universal life force energy that flows through all things. He perceived energetic patterns creating disease, and he corrected them with precisely focused intention powered by what he called love. Love? Despite everything, despite the impossibility of this conversation, I was leaning forward, hungry for more. Love is not mere emotion, Sarah. Love is the fundamental frequency that maintains all creation. It is the most powerful force in the universe, more powerful than nuclear energy, more fundamental than gravity. When Jesus taught, "Love one another," he was not being poetic. He was providing technical instruction for activating the most powerful healing technology available to you. The warmth in my hands had become a tingling, pulsing energy. I could feel the being's heartbeat growing stronger, steadier. "Feel that?" his voice asked. "That warmth, that energy, that is life force moving through you. You did not create it, you are channeling it. This is what Jesus did, what he taught his disciples to do. But the institutions built on his name transformed this empowerment teaching into doctrines of dependence, because empowered people do not need institutional control." So you're saying the church lied? Not lied, misunderstood, then perpetuated that misunderstanding. Some deliberately to maintain power, most unconsciously, teaching what they were taught. But the result is the same. Billions of humans praying to external God for powers they already possess, powers that Jesus came specifically to help them remember. I looked down at my hands, still resting on his chest. The dark bleeding had completely stopped. His breathing was deeper, more regular. I hadn't done anything, had I? "You did everything," he responded to my thought. "You opened yourself. You suspended disbelief. You allowed universal healing energy to flow through you without blocking it with doubt. This is what Jesus did, what he taught his disciples to do. But the institutions built on his name transformed this empowerment teaching into doctrines of dependence, because empowered people do not need institutional control." So you're saying the church lied? Not lied, misunderstood, then perpetuated that misunderstanding. Some deliberately to maintain power, most unconsciously, teaching what they were taught. But the result is the same. Billions of humans praying to external God for powers they already possess, powers that Jesus came specifically to help them remember.
I looked down at my hands, still resting on his chest. The dark bleeding had completely stopped. His breathing was deeper, more regular. I hadn't done anything, had I? You did everything, he responded to my thought. You opened yourself. You suspended disbelief. You allowed universal healing energy to flow through you without blocking it with doubt. This is what Jesus did, what he taught his disciples to do. But the institutions built on his name transformed this empowerment teaching into doctrines of dependence, because empowered people do not need institutional control. So you're saying the church lied? Not lied, misunderstood, then perpetuated that misunderstanding, some deliberately to maintain power, most unconsciously teaching what they were taught. But the result is the same. Billions of humans praying to external God for powers they already possess, powers that Jesus came specifically to help them remember. I looked down at my hands, still resting on his chest. The dark bleeding had completely stopped. His breathing was deeper, more regular. I hadn't done anything, had I? You did everything, replied the being. You opened yourself. You suspended disbelief. You allowed universal healing energy to flow through you without blocking it with doubt. This is what Jesus did, what he taught his disciples to do. But the institutions built on his name transformed this empowerment teaching into doctrines of dependence, because empowered people do not need institutional control. You're saying the church lied. Not lied, misunderstood, then perpetuated that misunderstanding, some deliberately to maintain power, most unconsciously, teaching what they were taught. But the result is the same. Billions of humans praying to external God for powers they already possess, powers that Jesus came specifically to help them remember. I looked down at my hands, still resting on his chest. The dark bleeding had completely stopped. His breathing was deeper, more regular. I hadn't done anything, had I? You did everything, he replied. You opened yourself. You suspended disbelief. You allowed universal healing energy to flow through you without blocking it with doubt. This is what Jesus did, what he taught his disciples to do. But the institutions built on his name transformed this empowerment teaching into doctrines of dependence, because empowered people do not need institutional control. Impossible, I whispered. But even as I said it, I was watching this alien being, this dying creature, stabilize under my hands. Impossible is just another word for you do not yet understand the principles involved. Nothing Jesus did was supernatural. It was all natural law properly applied. And you just did it. You just healed what your medicine could not touch. Now the question is, will you believe what you just experienced, or will you dismiss it as you have dismissed every other hint of your true nature? I had no answer, but my hands were still warm, still tingling, and the being beneath them was breathing steadily now. Something had happened. Something impossible. Something real.
I'm hallucinating, I said aloud, pulling my hands back. The stress, David's death, the isolation. I've finally had a breakdown. This is some kind of psychotic episode. You are not hallucinating. The being's voice was patient. Your mind is protecting itself from information that challenges everything you have built your identity around. This is a natural response. How do I know you're not just my subconscious trying to make sense of a crisis? Look at your field. Look at the craft. Touch the soil where it impacted. Your subconscious cannot create physical evidence. I did look. The wheat was pressed down in a perfect circle. The craft was still there, still softly glowing. The frost had melted in a ring around it. Shared psychosis? Folie à deux? Except I'm alone, so maybe... I was grasping at rational explanations. Any explanation that didn't require rebuilding my entire worldview at 11:50 on a Thursday night. This is demonic, I said suddenly, scrambling backward. The Bible warns about false teachers in the last days.
Satan appears as an angel of light. You were trying to deceive me away from true faith." "If I were here to deceive you," the being responded calmly, "would I be teaching you about love, compassion, and healing? Would I be showing you how to access your own divine power, making you less dependent rather than more? Would I be elevating Jesus' teachings rather than dismissing them?" "You're twisting them. Jesus is the Son of God, the only way to salvation." "I am not diminishing Jesus. I am showing you that he was even more extraordinary than your churches taught. They made him into an idol to worship at a distance. He came to make you into what he was. Which message honors him more?" I had no immediate answer to that. The church has studied scripture for 2,000 years, thousands of scholars, theologians, saints. Are you saying they were all wrong? That you know better? I am saying they taught the best truth they had access to, filtered through human limitation and institutional need. When the church consolidated power in the 4th century under Constantine, what happened to teachings that empowered individuals? They were declared heretical. Texts were burned. Teachers were killed. That's conspiracy theory. That is documented history. The Gospel of Thomas, which contains Jesus' most direct teachings about inner divine nature, was buried. Why? Because it said the kingdom is inside you and outside you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known. That message does not require priests, tithes, or obedience to institutional authority. I wanted to argue but realized I didn't actually know enough church history to refute him. "If what you're saying is true," I said slowly, "then who am I? My entire life has been built on being a good Christian. I was baptized, confirmed, married in the church. I taught Sunday school. If that was all based on incomplete understanding, then what does that make me? A fool?" "It makes you someone who lived the best truth available to you." His mental voice was gentle now. "Evolution is not betrayal, Sarah. A caterpillar does not betray its nature by becoming a butterfly. You honored Jesus with your life of service. Now you have opportunity to honor him by becoming what he demonstrated was possible." "But everyone I know, everyone I love, they believe the traditional way. If I accept what you're saying, I lose them. I become the heretic, the deceived one, the crazy lady who thinks she can heal like Jesus. Or you become the one who remembered, and your remembering might help others remember." "Why me?" The question burst out of me. "I'm nobody special. I'm a 45-year-old widow working night shifts in Montana. I'm not a guru, not a mystic, not even a particularly good Christian anymore. Why would cosmic beings choose me for this?" Jesus did not choose the high priests, or the wealthy, or the politically connected. He chose fishermen, tax collectors, prostitutes, the broken, the humble, the ones ground down enough to be open. Because the broken are teachable, the wounded are humble, and humility is the only doorway to truth. "I'm broken, all right, completely broken." "No, you are broken open, and that is entirely different." "David," I whispered, tears suddenly streaming down my face. "I prayed so hard for David. If what you're saying is true, if I had this power all along, if I could have healed him—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "You could not have saved him. But you just said—" "I said you have access to healing energy, not that you control all outcomes. David's consciousness made choices before incarnating. His soul had lessons to complete, experiences to gather. Your desperation and grief, while completely understandable, could not override his soul's plan. So I'm still powerless." The bitterness in my voice surprised me. "You are powerful within the boundaries of free will and soul choice. You cannot force healing on someone whose soul has chosen to transition, but you can facilitate healing for those who are ready to receive it. This is what Jesus did. He could not heal everyone, remember. He was limited by their faith, their readiness, their soul's plan. Mrs. Patterson died last week, 73 years old, breast cancer. She was a Sunday school teacher for 40 years. She begged God for mercy every day. She was terrified she hadn't been good enough, that she'd go to hell for some sin she couldn't remember committing. I held her hand while she died, trying to comfort her, and I had nothing to offer but empty platitudes. The being was silent for a moment. Mrs. Patterson knows now. Death is not the end, it is a transition. And in that transition, many things become clear that were clouded in physical form. She understands now that she was always loved, always enough, always divine. She is not in hell. Hell is a human invention, a control mechanism. She is returning to source, to love, to home. How can you know that? Because I have transitioned multiple times. Because I remember what you forget when you incarnate. Because death is not the terrible thing you have been taught to fear. It is simply changing frequency, changing form. If I had known this before, I sobbed, if I could have told her she was already enough, already loved, already divine, she could have died peacefully instead of in terror. You can tell others now. You can share this truth. You can prevent others from dying in unnecessary fear. This is part of why I came to you. I cried then, really cried, for the first time since David's funeral. For Mrs. Patterson, for David, for all the patients I couldn't save, for myself, kneeling in a frozen field beside an alien being who was telling me everything I'd believed was incomplete at 11:50 on a Thursday night. Let it flow. His voice was soft in my mind. Grief is not weakness. It is love with nowhere to go. Feel it fully. And when you are ready, we will continue.
When my tears finally subsided, I realized something remarkable. The being was sitting up. Not just stable, sitting up, alert. His large eyes focused on me with unmistakable compassion. "Your arm," I gasped. "It was broken. And now it is healed. You did that, Sarah. The energy you channeled accelerated my biology's natural healing capacity by a factor of thousands. What would have taken weeks took minutes. I didn't do anything, I just put my hands..." "Exactly. You just opened yourself to universal life force and allowed it to flow. This is all healing requires. Shall I show you more? Would more proof help your resistance?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Stand up. Let me scan you." I stood, and the being rose fluidly to his feet, completely healed, showing no sign of the injuries that had nearly killed him minutes ago. He gestured for me to stand still, then moved his hands in patterns around my body without touching me. "What are you..." "Your right knee. You injured it 11 years ago, stepped in a hole during a night shift. The ligament never healed correctly. It causes you pain when the weather changes." I froze. I'd never told anyone about that injury. I'd just learned to work through the chronic ache. "Your left ovary. Cyst formation, 3 centimeters. You have noticed irregular cycles for 6 months, but dismissed it as perimenopause." My hand went instinctively to my lower abdomen. How could he know? "Your neck. C5, C6 vertebrae. Compression from 15 years of hunching over patient beds. Creates headaches 3 to 4 times weekly. You take ibuprofen and tell no one, because you are a caregiver. You do not allow yourself to need care." Tears pricked my eyes again. Every detail was accurate, things no one could know from observation. "And here," his hand hovered over my heart center, "a density in the energetic field. This is where grief lives in the body. This is what prevents your prayers from flowing clearly. Unprocessed loss creates static in your consciousness, like trying to broadcast through a damaged antenna." "How do you know all this?" "Every condition creates a distinct energy signature. Physical illness is always preceded by energetic disruption. Jesus perceived these signatures instantly. This is how he knew what was wrong before people told him. He was reading the energy field around and within the body. "Can you teach me?" "I can begin to teach you. Come." He led me to my back porch, where I kept potted plants that were barely surviving the Montana winter. He pointed to an African violet that was more brown than purple, dying despite my attempts to save it. "This plant is dying because of your energy," he said bluntly. "What? I water it. You water it while feeling hopeless, while thinking it will probably die anyway, while believing you cannot keep things alive. The plant absorbs that frequency and responds accordingly. Watch as I heal this plant." He placed his hands above the pot, not touching the soil, and closed his enormous eyes. I watched in stunned silence, as over the course of maybe 10 minutes, the plant transformed. Brown leaves didn't fall off, they turned green again, cell by cell. Withered stems straightened, and then, impossibly, a new bud began to form, swelling and opening into a vibrant purple bloom. "That should take weeks," I whispered. "It would if constrained by normal time and biological processes. But consciousness can accelerate matter's response. Jesus did not violate natural law when he healed. He worked with natural law at such an advanced level that it appeared miraculous to those who did not understand the principles." From his damaged craft, he retrieved a small container. Inside were perhaps 20 small crystalline objects that looked like seeds. "These are nutrition crystals from my world. Watch." He concentrated, his eyes shifting to a deep purple color. In my hand, where he had placed 5 of the crystals, I felt warmth, and then I felt weight. I opened my palm to find not 5 crystals, but 15. How? Consciousness, focused through intention, can reorganize matter at the molecular level. On a small scale like this, it is relatively simple for those trained in the technique. Jesus multiplied loaves and fishes using the same principle, but with such mastery that he could affect enough matter to feed thousands. The food did not materialize from nothing. He was rearranging available molecular structures, converting energy to matter. My scientific training was screaming that this was impossible. My eyes were telling me it had just happened. "Your knee," the being said. "Let me teach you to heal it yourself." This is what Jesus wanted everyone to learn. He guided me to sit and placed my own hands over my right knee. "Feel the pain. Do not resist it. Acknowledge it." "Good. Now feel love, not as emotion, but as energy. Imagine golden light, warm and gentle, flowing from your heart, down your arms, into your hands. Feel it entering your knee, seeking out the damaged tissue." I tried, expecting nothing, but the warmth came again, that same tingling energy I'd felt when treating him. Now hold absolute certainty that the knee is healed. Not hope, certainty. See it healed, feel it healed, know it healed. The universe responds to certainty, not desperation. For 15 minutes, I sat there, hands on my knee, feeling energy pulse through my palms. When I finally stood and took a step, I gasped. The chronic ache was gone, completely gone. I bent the knee, then straightened it. No pain. I did that! I actually did that! You activated principles Jesus taught. This capacity exists in every human. He came to demonstrate that you do not need external saviors when you can access universal healing forces directly.
Your colleague, Thomas, the surgeon with pancreatic cancer. He has told no one yet, but he is dying. Think of him now." I did think of Tom, brilliant, proud Tom who'd been more withdrawn lately. If he had cancer, send healing energy to him right now, not physically, through consciousness. Intention transcends space. Jesus healed the centurion's servant from a distance. He healed people he never met physically. This is possible because consciousness is not limited by physical location. The being guided me through the process, visualizing Tom, feeling compassion for him, imagining golden healing light surrounding him, holding certainty that he was receiving healing energy. How will I know if it worked? You will know. 2 days later, I would get a call from Tom. His scheduled biopsies showed no sign of the mass that had appeared on his previous scan. The doctors were baffled. Tom was calling it a miracle. I would know what it really was. Consciousness technology in action.
We sat in my kitchen as dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. The being's craft was still in my field, but he made no move to leave. "There's more you need to understand," he said. "The consciousness you knew as Jesus of Nazareth had evolved far beyond need for physical incarnation. He was what we call an ascended master, a being who had completed hundreds of lifetimes, evolved through multiple dimensions, and existed primarily as pure consciousness. He chose to descend, to take physical form, as part of what you might call a cosmic assistance program." You're saying Jesus was an alien? I am saying Jesus was advanced consciousness that had evolved beyond planetary limitations. Starseed is a word some use. He incarnated on Earth voluntarily, bringing with him full memory of his true nature, something most humans forget when they are born. He came specifically to demonstrate what awakened humanity could become. So he wasn't the Son of God in the way I was taught? He was a Son of God in the way that every consciousness is offspring of Source, but he was not an exclusive, unique exception. When he said, "I and the Father are one," he was not claiming exclusive divine status. He was revealing truth about all consciousness, including yours. The tragedy is that the churches took his demonstration of what you could become and transformed it into worship of someone you could never be. Jesus was never alone, the being continued. He maintained constant communication with what you might call a cosmic council, a collective of evolved consciousness from multiple civilizations who coordinate spiritual assistance for developing planets. The angels? Some of what you call angels were encounters with beings like me, physical, but from worlds you would consider heaven. Some were non-physical consciousness that exists in higher dimensions. All were part of the support network helping Jesus accomplish his mission. His 40 days in the wilderness was an intensive consciousness conference. He was receiving detailed guidance on how to teach humans who had forgotten their true nature, how to demonstrate abilities without creating dependency, how to plant seeds that would germinate even after his physical form was gone. Every miracle Jesus performed was application of natural law. When he healed, he perceived the energetic blueprint of perfect health and helped the person's biology align with that blueprint. When he manifested food, he was converting energy to matter using consciousness as the tool. When he walked on water, he was altering the molecular density of his body to match the water's surface tension. When he was resurrected, he demonstrated that consciousness can reanimate matter, that awareness transcends physical death. And anyone can learn this? Anyone who releases the programming that says they cannot. Jesus said clearly, "You will do even greater works than these." He was not being modest. He was stating fact. As human consciousness evolves, as more people remember their true nature, abilities Jesus demonstrated will become normal. When Jesus taught, "Love one another," he was providing precise technical instruction. Love is not merely emotion. It is the fundamental frequency that maintains all creation. It is literal energetic force measurable by your instruments. Love frequency?
At the cellular level, genuine love generates electromagnetic fields that promote healing, accelerate regeneration, and optimize all biological functions. At the manifestation level, love frequency is the carrier wave for creation. When you operate from this frequency, you align with the creative force of the universe. Reality rearranges to match your vibration. So all those sermons about love were partially correct but incomplete. They emphasized emotional love and moral love, but missed love as technology. Jesus lived in constant love frequency. This is why his presence was healing, why people felt better just being near him. His consciousness was operating at a frequency that automatically elevated everything around him. "You're saying I have been praying wrong my entire life," he said gently. "Prayer based on, 'Please God, give me,' reinforces separation and lack. True prayer is conscious manifestation." He taught me the correct method. Feel as if already received. Elevate emotional frequency to gratitude rather than desperation. Release attachment to how it manifests. Maintain consistent consciousness rather than 1 minute of prayer followed by hours of worry. Jesus gave thanks before miracles materialized because he understood they were already complete energetically. Physical reality simply needed time to catch up. After Jesus' physical death, those who understood his true teachings were systematically suppressed. The church transformed empowerment philosophy into control mechanism. He showed me how. Kingdom within you became kingdom in distant heaven. You will do greater works became only Jesus could perform miracles. I and the Father are one became Jesus is uniquely divine. Your faith heals you became God heals if you're worthy. People who understand their own tower don't need intermediaries. They don't pay tithes for salvation. They don't submit to religious authority. The church built an empire on keeping humanity ignorant of their divine nature. You're living in the era Jesus anticipated when he spoke of his return. His return is not him coming from the sky. His return is collective awakening of Christ consciousness within humanity. You are part of the first wave, the early awakeners. Your function is to demonstrate by living example that awakened consciousness produces transformed life. Others will notice. They will ask. You will teach, not by preaching, but by being. So I'm supposed to go back to my life and just, what? Start healing people? Start living from love frequency. Start practicing conscious manifestation. Start viewing yourself as divine consciousness having temporary physical experience. The details will unfold naturally. Physical universe is multidimensional school designed to accelerate consciousness evolution. You chose to incarnate here to learn specific lessons. Before birth, you reviewed life options and selected circumstances, including challenges, because they offered optimal growth opportunities. I chose David's death? Your higher consciousness chose a life path that included that possibility, yes, because grief would break open your heart in ways that would allow this awakening. I know that is painful to hear, but nothing is random. Everything serves evolution. And after death, consciousness continues, reviews life experiences, integrates lessons, and chooses next incarnation or dimension. You are eternal consciousness, Sarah. The you that is aware right now has always existed and will always exist. Birth and death are simply doorways, not beginnings and endings. As the sun rose fully, painting my kitchen in golden light, I sat in silence, my entire worldview rebuilding itself from the foundation up. What do I do now? I finally asked. You live these truths. You embody what Jesus demonstrated, and by your example, others will awaken.
The being stayed 3 more days while his craft regenerated. In that time, my entire life transformed. The resistance finally broke. I could no longer deny what I'd experienced, seen, felt. These weren't beliefs I was adopting. They were truths I was recognizing. Something ancient within me was remembering. On the second morning, I went to the place where David had died. I knelt on our driveway and I grieved, really grieved, for the first time. But this time, the grief was clean, without the layer of anger at God, without the crushing weight of unanswered prayers, without the guilt that maybe I hadn't prayed hard enough. Just pure grief for love lost, love remembered, and beneath the grief, a new understanding. David was not gone. He had simply changed form. I started small. Morning meditation, practicing feeling gratitude for health as if already healed rather than begging for it. My chronic knee pain didn't return. I tried healing intention on another plant. This one responded even faster than the being's demonstration. I set an intention to manifest a specific amount of money, and 2 days later, an insurance refund I'd forgotten about arrived for that exact amount. It was real. It was all real. My vision started changing, not physically, but I began seeing more. Subtle energy fields around people, emotional states as colors. When my neighbor came by, I could see the grief she was carrying in her chest before she told me about her sister's death. At the hospital, I started perceiving illness as disruption in energy patterns before lab tests confirmed diagnoses. Within a week, everything started shifting. The ovarian cyst the being had detected resolved itself, confirmed by ultrasound. My chronic neck tension dissolved. I slept deeply for the first time in 3 years, and my dreams were vivid, instructive. And I had energy, real energy, that I hadn't felt since before David died. I stopped praying the old way entirely. No more begging, no more bargaining. Instead, thank you for perfect health. Thank you for abundant energy. Thank you for loving connections. Thank you for divine guidance. And unlike my old prayers that felt like they disappeared into a void, these prayers felt like setting intentions into a responsive universe. I wasn't the same Sarah anymore. Not a powerless human hoping for divine intervention. I was divine consciousness having a temporary physical experience. I was a healer in the truest sense, not because of my nursing degree, but because I could channel universal life force. I was Sarah Mitchell, and I was also so much more than Sarah Mitchell. On the third day, the being prepared to leave. "You no longer need me," he said. "You have direct connection to the same consciousness that guided Jesus. Trust your inner knowing. Live these truths. Your transformation will inspire others." How will I know what to do? You will know. The guidance is always there. You simply never learned to listen. Now you will. After his craft lifted silently into the pre-dawn sky, I sat in my kitchen and made a decision. I would return to my work as a nurse, but I would not be the same nurse. I would facilitate healing in ways that medicine alone could never achieve. Every patient would be an opportunity to channel love frequency, to see them as the divine beings they truly were, to help them remember their own healing capacity. And when they asked, and I knew they would ask, I would share what I had learned, not by preaching, but by demonstrating, not by converting, but by awakening. For the first time in 3 years since David's death, I felt truly alive.
My first shift back at work, everything was different. I could see patients' energy fields, perceive where healing was needed before symptoms fully manifested. I continued my nursing duties exactly as trained, but now I silently channeled healing intention with every IV I started, every medication I administered, every hand I held. Mrs. Chen's post-surgical infection cleared in half the expected time.
The doctors called it her strong immune system. I knew better. Mr. Rodriguez's chronic pain decreased dramatically. He said it was the new medication. I had held my hands over his back during wound care, channeling the same energy that had healed the gray being. Young Emma, the car accident victim who wasn't expected to walk again, took her first steps 2 weeks ahead of schedule. The physical therapists were amazed. I had spent 15 minutes with her each shift, teaching her to visualize golden light healing her spine, to feel certainty rather than hope. Dr. Stevens noticed. "Sarah, your patients recover faster. What's your secret?" I smiled. "I'm just present with them. Really present." It wasn't the lie. Being fully present, operating from love frequency, seeing them as divine consciousness temporarily experiencing limitation, that was my secret. I couldn't explain it to him. Not yet. But others started asking questions. 3 nurses, a physical therapist, even one of the physicians started pulling me aside. "Something's different about you. What happened?" To each, I offered small pieces of truth, gauging readiness. To some, I taught simple presence techniques. To others, I explained viewing patients as energy rather than just flesh. To the few who seemed truly ready, I shared more about consciousness creating healing, about love as literal force, about abilities dormant within them. My personal life transformed too. My daughter Jennifer visited and immediately asked, "Mom, you look 10 years younger. What's going on?" We had the first real conversation we'd had since David's death, about consciousness, about the nature of reality, about her own spiritual hunger that church had never satisfied. Linda, my friend who'd stopped calling, reached out. "I had a dream about you. You were glowing. I know that sounds crazy, but I felt like I needed to check in." Within 6 weeks, I was quietly hosting small gatherings at my farmhouse. Not church services, consciousness development circles, teaching what the gray being had taught me, showing others how to access healing abilities, how to pray effectively, how to remember their divine nature. The wheat field where the craft had landed, plants there grew faster, fuller, more vibrant than anywhere else on my property. A physical reminder of the night everything changed. Sarah Mitchell's journey reveals something you may have suspected, but never had the courage to fully embrace. You have more power than you've been taught. Much more. The churches, the religions, the institutions that claim to speak for God, they've kept you small. Not necessarily from malice, but from their own fear. Fear that if you knew your true nature, you wouldn't need them anymore. And they're right to fear that, because once you understand what Jesus really taught, once you activate the abilities he demonstrated, you become ungovernable. Not rebellious, just free. Jesus didn't come to create a religion of dependency. He came to demonstrate what every human being can become. When he said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he meant it literally. When he said, "You will do even greater works than I have done," he wasn't being modest. He was stating fact. You are not a powerless sinner waiting for external salvation. You are divine consciousness having temporary human experience. You are a fragment of God, experiencing itself through your unique perspective. And the abilities that Jesus demonstrated, healing, manifestation, transformation, these are your birthright. Not because you're special, because you're human. And being human means possessing divine potential that most people never activate. Now you have a choice. You can close this video and return to the comfortable illusion that you're powerless, that life happens to you, that God is a distant judge evaluating your worthiness. That's safe. That's familiar. Or you can do what Sarah did. You can start experimenting with these principles. You can begin treating prayer as manifestation technology rather than desperate supplication. You can start channeling love frequency consciously and watch how reality responds. Leave a comment and tell me, have you ever experienced a moment where your thoughts seemed to directly create your reality? A time when you felt connected to something greater than yourself? An inexplicable healing that defied medical explanation? Share your story below. You might discover you're not alone in these experiences. Your story might be the catalyst that helps someone else remember who they really are. If you want more stories like this, stories that challenge everything you thought you knew about Jesus, spirituality, and human potential, subscribe to Stories of Light and activate the bell. Because Sarah's story isn't unique. There are more witnesses, more encounters, more evidence that everything you were taught about God, Jesus, and your own power is incomplete. Remember, Jesus' return is not him coming from the sky to save you. Jesus' return is you awakening to the Christ consciousness that has always existed within you. You are the second coming, not because you're Jesus, because you're finally becoming who Jesus came to show you that you are.